So what's up, guys? Let's talk about a few camera myths that I've come across. The first one I want to talk about is frame rate. It's gonna get a little to the weeds. It's gonna get a little nerdy on the camera side. So if you're like a producer or sound guy, you're not really interested in these kind of camera stuff, you can just peace out. Just watch the next video. The first one is 30 frames versus 24 frames per second. Okay. So a typical film camera or an old school film camera uses 24 frames per second. And then the video world came out and television, and they started doing, when everything converted from film to video, they started doing 30 frames per second. So TV broadcast is in 30 frames per second. I think like British television is 25 frames per second. They're weird. We're not going to talk about that. So 30 frames per second versus 24 frames per second. If you're me and you are probably in this genre with me, you're a DSLR guy. You grew up on DSLRs, you learned DSLRs. The only thing you've ever known is a Canon Rebel T3i. So you had the option of shooting 30 frames per second or 24 frames per second. Everybody says 24 frames per second is the cinematic look, and I want to say yes, but the myth is it's not. 24 frames is not necessarily a filmmaking or cinematic look. There are other frame rates you can use. There's other shutter speeds you can use. And I've seen them before, and now I've worked with a lot of different cameras, and the true 24p is not, it's not cinematic. So if you want to shoot a cinematic movie and you're in 30 frames per second, it's okay. It's not going to look bad. I don't know, people get into these like mindsets that they need certain things about a camera in order to achieve their cinematic look. But cinematic look is lighting, focus, and then of course the story of the cinematic thing that you're making. That's the cinematic part. Frame rate, doesn't matter. We've got The Hobbit shot in 48 frames. We've got like, if you ever seen Mad Max, the recent one, that one's intense. And they shot in like, there are so many different shutter speeds and so many different frame rates of that it's not, how can you say that's not cinematic? And it's not, and it's, yeah. 24 frames, myth. The next one I want to look at, camera quality. Yeah, that's a big one. I say we got a pretty good solid foot as filmmakers into the 4K world, and everyone thinks that you need 4K, Ultra 4K, Ultra HD video in order to be a cool cinematographer or like a badass filmmaker. 4K, let me talk about everything that's bad with 4K. 4K takes up a lot of data, and if a client asks for 4K, and if they want look at this little hair flop. Oh yeah, now I'm cool. If the client wants 4K, you gotta like backtrack a little bit. Like, wait, why do you want 4K? And they're like, oh, well. Yeah, if a client asks for 4K specifically, I would start to question that a little bit. Like, why do you need 4K? You're gonna put this on YouTube on your company's website. Why do they need 4K? And usually they just say like, oh, well, that's what I thought I needed. 4K, it's not, I mean, it's not really future-proofing. I mean, maybe in 5 years, 10 years, 4K will be the standard. If you're like at this moment trying to get 4K to future-proof your work, it's a little bit of a luxury. So 4K, that's a luxury. That's a myth. You don't need 4K. Oh, I guess the next one with this one is kind of dynamic range. Or just like a good, dynamic range, you know, like how bright the highlights are versus how dark the shadows are. It's awesome. Cameras have great dynamic range, and me as a cinematographer, I love high dynamic range cameras because you can just do so much with it. You can like, if you screw up your exposure a little bit, or if you get the exposure just right, you can like bring those levels up, bring them down, and it just. But do you need it as a filmmaker? Do you need it as someone starting out in the filmmaking world who has just opened up a video production house? Not really. You can, and one guy I come across, he said he does everything on his iPhone. He does commercial production on iPhone, which I was like, respect. I'm on DSLR here. Who knows what this dynamic range is? And then you got like point and shoots. Who knows what that is? The final thing about camera myths is, having like a badass camera rig, or like not having this super tricked out follow focus matte box shoulder rig. But for people that are starting out and they are worrying about that, or they're looking on they're looking on B&H Photo, or they're looking online at thinking about getting that kind of gear or equipment, and they're freaking out that they're not going to look badass enough for the client. I've never been able to grasp that myth that you need a badass looking camera in order to impress the clients. Like, what the fuck does the client know about this camera versus a Red Epic Dragon? That to me sounds like you're picking the wrong client, or that to me sounds like your client thinks they know a lot more than they should know. And they really don't know what they're talking about. Oh, I would never show up on set if they're paying me this much money with a DSLR. I would never show up. Like, why? Like, I can get good quality with that. If I show up with a GH4, shoot some great looking footage, and they're like, oh, well, you're gonna look stupid. It's gonna look like amateur hour. It's like, okay, but then you show them the final product, or they've seen your work before, and then where's the part where it said that you have to look like a badass in order to make badass videos? It's a fucking myth. Guys, you just need to get out there and just make good movies. Like, tell a good story. What makes a good story? That's what you need to think about. What's good lighting? What's good camera technique? That's the filmmaking process. This gear, the plastic and metal and electronics and wires and cords, that's not filmmaking. Telling a good story, telling a great, powerful story that compels you as an individual. So thanks for watching, guys. My name is Jordan Anderson. Be sure to subscribe to us. Follow us on Instagram at Jordan P. Anderson. And if you want to see all the gear that I use, because it doesn't really matter, go down in the description below. Check it all out. I'm not going to put Amazon links because I'm not selling this. Wait, actually, no. In the comments, tell me about camera myths that you have believed, or tell me about some truth that you think is you have to do this as a filmmaker. I want to hear about it because I kind of want to debate you on it. I want to hear that you need this, this, and this in order to be a filmmaker. I want to hear that part. That's going to be interesting. And of course, be sure to subscribe, follow us on Instagram. My name is Jordan Anderson. I've said everything I need to say, and thanks for watching.